Welcome. I'm Catherine Alexander from Bridge to Partnership and steward of the Coming Home Project. So my focus is on regenerative leadership because we're at a time when we need to do differently. And those who are aware of how different this time is and how urgent it is are being called forward to help us make it through. And it's a long-term game. It's not a short-term thing. It's not like this is a crisis and then we get to settle down to something else. It's a long-term process. And the change we need to make is also long-term. So welcome. I hope this floats your boat. I hope you're interested and curious and really excited about what you can do to make this process really work for people. So what is regenerative leadership and how can it be different? What can it do that's different from what we have been referring to as leadership up till now? It's very different because we're leading, one, for the long term, and two, it's about really changing people's understanding and habits of thinking and ways of interacting. It's a full-scale change for both the personal level and the group level. And then hopefully we can scale up from there. Often I title and talk about listening to the earth and ask, what is the earth asking? So that's what I want to talk about today, because what does the earth ask? What is she asking for? She is changing her way of being so that she can rebalance herself. Life only wants life. And that is both the good news and the bad news. She wants life. She has worked for millions and billions, actually, of years to bring life forth on this planet, and to, in doing so, to make it more complex. And we are part of that complexity, part of that master plan. So keeping life on the planet is really key. I don't think, and this is concerning to some people, she cares who that life is. She cares that it is more complex and that it fosters that complexity, that living being helps to foster more life on the planet. That's bad news because we aren't doing that. We are really good at eliminating life. That's probably the key thing that's gotten us into this. And there are lots of reasons why: being separate, insisting on power over, those are the two key things. So given that we're in that situation, what is she asking for? So she wants life to continue. And she doesn't care what it looks like, and she's willing to scratch it all and start all over again. She's done that at least 5 times that we know of on a major scale. And we're working on the 6th time at our insistence. So we're facilitating this change, and she's going, okay, if that's what you guys want, here we go. So the change that she's making, because we have disseminated the systems that keep the planet functioning in the way we're used to, is to become hotter. Because part of what she created was a method to continually cool the planet and to keep it at a regular temperature, regular oxygen. I mean, that was James Lovelock's aha, when he realized that the percentage of oxygen has stayed the same on this planet for millions of years. How is that possible? Who's regulating? Turns out we're all regulating. We're all part of that. And we have decimated that regulation system to such an extent that it can't function anymore at the way it used to. So it's got to figure out a new way of functioning. We, being the conscious beings that we are, the clever life forms that we are, can help to modulate that, I believe, if we act quickly, in concert, doing the right things. It's a tall order. However, you got to start somewhere. So what the planet needs is to have that cooling balance healed, resurrected from the tatters that we have been creating. So a small shift into what my mind is not grabbing the word. I can almost see it, but it's the water cycle. Biopic water cycle. I'm not sure that's right, but it is how biology does the water cycle that keeps the planet cool. And if you're like me, when you were in school, you learned that water fell from the sky from clouds, went into rivers, rivers went into the ocean, it evaporated from the ocean into clouds, which went and fell. That's a tiny, tiny part of that cycle. What we've totally missed, and which doesn't appear to be in the models that science is using to figure out how we're dealing with all this, they've forgotten plants. It astonishes me how it's only recently that we've really started to looking at life to understand we're alive, that's relevant, that has bearing on the things we do and the way we understand the world. We've ignored that totally. So if we're alive, if life needs water, and all life that we know of needs water, then that's really an important piece. So the way that cycle actually works the strongest is when you have a group of plants called a forest, and that forest gets water, which it uses, and then it evapotranspires. I'm not sure I've got that word right either, into the clouds, and the clouds move away, and then they rain again. There are rivers of water that flow through the earth. And those rivers of water are fed by plants. When those plants die or are decimated, as we're doing in the rainforest and the Amazon, then we are impacting those rivers. They're not as full. They flow differently because of the volume and the texture and all of that changes. And that's part of what we're seeing. So we can, as regenerative leaders, really impact that. You don't have to know anything more but that and have the passionate desire to do something. You'll hear me talking about this a lot because it's such a simple thing we can do. And if a lot of people did it, if so many people did, if you did it just where you are, you can have a huge impact. And that is plant forests. Now that seems like an overwhelming and, oh my God, where do I start? Process, but it's not as bad as it seems. There's a lovely book called Mini Forest Revolution by Hannah Lewis. And she shares the Miyagawa method of planting forests. So it takes a little work. You've got to discover what the original plants are for where you are, and maybe for several places of where you are, because ecosystems change. It's not uniform. So being really specific about the area you want to plant, and it doesn't have to be big. It can be as small as 6 parking spaces. Research, find those plants, then get them, which is the other big hurdle, because these are original plants. So you may have to go back a few hundred years to find them, depending on how civilized your space is. And then they're all planted in one day. So the hard part is research. The longest part is research. Then there's this furious planting day. And then you just nurture it. You water it for 3 years. And in 3 years, it's established and you can leave it alone. It will be fine. And it begins to propagate. It begins to bring back the bugs and the animals that used to live in it. So as many of those as can be planted wherever you are, wherever it's possible, begin to bring back the green covering we need to make rain. In order to plant those forests, the first piece of that is soil remediation, because the soil has to be good for that, for those plants. So you can start there before you've done anything else to begin to remediate the soil around you. And the first step is compost. Not a big deal. And then you can grow from there. So that's my wisdom for today. Really think water. Where you are, you need water. Water prevents fires, prevents flooding. If you do this correctly, the water goes down. It doesn't go off, which is what creates flooding. So you have to get that soil able to hold the water. So then you can survive drought longer, you get rid of fires, and you mitigate floods. What's not to like? So that's the first easy thing I would suggest. And you'll hear me say this more than once. Thanks for listening. There's more information on the Coming Home Project website. So please join us there. And the link will be in the notes, and we should be able to see that. It's community.living-regeneratively.world. See you soon.